Hello! Today's tutorial is going to be how to make these cute little monster ornaments. You can either hang them on your Christmas tree or in your rearview mirror, or I guess wherever you decide that they would just brighten up a space. I've got two here to show you today that one of them has longer danglier arms and cute little extra tooth. This one has a bit of black around the outside of the eye. So first of all, let's see what's in your kit. You're going to have two different colors of wool so that your kit will make two monsters. And so this will be the main body and arm color. And you're going to have some white for the eyes and some black that's going to be for filling in the mouth hole and for the pupils. You'll have a teeny tiny amount for the tooth if you decide to put one in as well, but that's just going to be such a minuscule amount that it just blends in with this amount that's going to be for the eyes as well. You'll also have a couple of rings to open up and put on the top of your finished monster to be able to hang him, and a hook to be able to attach. We'll put those aside as well. So to begin with, we're going to set aside our black and our white, and we're going to open up the color of our body. And after we've unraveled it, you see that it's quite long. We're going to pull off about approximately a 4-inch, let me move this up, approximately a 4-inch long section by 4 inches. In order to pull this wool apart, it's really easy if you have your hands a little bit farther apart. If you have your hands too close together, it feels quite strong and harder to pull, but if you have them farther apart and you pull, it'll come right apart without any trouble at all. So here you go, we have this piece of wool, and this is going to be for the arms. You can leave it as is for now and just set it aside. One of the keys to success in needle felting is not having whatever your project is to have too much air in it to begin with, because if it has too much air and we just lightly just bundle this up and we start, you're also going to have a needle in your kit, and the needle is barbed and very sharp, so please be very careful. These barbs are what help tangle and condense the wool together and make it a solid. So as I was saying, if you have a lot of air in your project when you've rolled it up, and you're going to be stabbing and stabbing and stabbing for a very long time. What you need to do to begin with is we're going to just be making a very basic ball shape, and we're going to try, as we're rolling up our wool, to get as much of that air out of it as possible. So I'm just going to start moving the wool in on itself and folding it, and moving it in and folding it and rolling it. If it feels like it's getting a little bit thick on this side, this is a nice kind of wool for 3D projects, because the staple is short. The staple of wool is how long it grows on an individual breed of sheep. This is called Corriedale wool, and it is very easy to work with. So if it feels like it's kind of bunching up and looking kind of like a spiral, we don't really want that, because it's going to end up showing up on our final project. But if we just pull out a little bit of the wool, you can see then it easily pulled out, and I'm just going to fold it over, and look at that spiral is pretty much gone. And so we're just going to keep on rolling. You're going to want to keep it in as much of a ball shape as possible. And that's only if you want your monster to actually look like the demonstration monsters. That's the great thing about this project, is that a monster, it doesn't have to look like anything at all. You can make yours in a rectangle, you could make it in an oval, you could make it in a triangle. It doesn't matter, whatever shape you want it to be. This is a great beginner project. So once you've finished rolling it all into the ball shape, you can even see that this one's not even perfect yet, but I can move and manipulate the wool. It's not super hard, but you can kind of see that it's more dense already than what I showed you when I just loosely packed it together. So holding it with your non-dominant hand, take your needle and going straight in and straight out on your project. You're going to start stabbing into the wool. Now, the importance of going straight in and straight out is just because the needle itself is fairly fine on the end. If you go in and then kind of pull it out at a different direction, it's going to snap off, and you're just going to have to then try and find the broken part of the needle in there, and it's just not a good thing. So let's just keep stabbing, and we're going to move over, especially to these ends that look a little bit wispy, where the very final part of our rolling was done. And we're going to stab those in to secure them. It doesn't take a lot of stabbing to secure our basic shape. So when I say straight in and straight out, I mean no matter what direction. So you see that sometimes I'm stabbing from over this side, but as long as my needle goes in and out in the same direction, it's fine. I just don't want to go in and then pull up towards me when I pull it out. So here you can see that I haven't spent very much time stabbing the wool yet, and it's already holding its shape. It's not as dense as our demo. It's not as round as our demo. The surface isn't as smooth. There's more fluff. So the longer you stab, the smoother your surface is going to be, the denser it's going to be. So you can see that this guy, when I squeeze him, doesn't really do much. I put the same amount of pressure here. It's almost a little bit more like a spongy marshmallow. So I'm just going to continue working, moving around my ball. And the nice thing about making wool 3D projects is if you've ever worked with Play-Doh or clay, and you know that if you want to manipulate that clay in one direction, you just have to push it in that direction, right? If this was Play-Doh and I went squish and I squished it to the one side and I lifted my finger, there's going to be a dent there. The same sort of thing is going to happen with wool. If I keep on stabbing in one spot, that's going to create a dent there. So whatever direction I'm felting, that's the direction that the wool is going to move in. So at this point, because I want a sphere, spheres have all the same angles all over around the whole shape. I'm going to just keep the ball moving, kind of concentrating. I can see already that it's a little denser here and a lot more fluffy right there. So I'm going to concentrate on the fluffier sides and moving my ball around. Now, seeing as this is my first video tutorial and I'm not super technologically savvy, you're gonna have to just bear with me and either felt right along with me at the same time, or if you're just watching first, you might just want to fast forward the parts when it looks a little bit boring because all I'm doing is stabbing. Eventually, if I get better at this and can put out more tutorials, hopefully I'll be able to learn the video editing skills to fast forward some of these more tedious parts. Now, I say tedious, but felting is actually, I find it very relaxing. Other than I can't watch TV or anything while doing it because I need to concentrate on where my needle is going so I don't stab my finger. But if I find it very relaxing. You can listen to audiobooks, you can visit with friends, just keep on stabbing. I'm getting there, it's getting closer. And depending on what your product is going to be at the end, so it depends on how long you have to stab. An ornament generally has to be less solid than something that is going to be functional. If something is going to be functional, you need it to be quite solid so that it doesn't pull apart very easily. But an ornament, a monster ornament, just think, you know, a glass ornament on your Christmas tree, you have to be gentle. A wool ornament on your Christmas tree, if it's not super well felted, you have to be gentle. So it's not that big of a deal if it's still got a bit of squish in it and you're tired of stabbing at this point. It doesn't have to be perfectly solid, just as long as you have a fairly firm base for your arms to attach to. So one other thing is you will notice, because wool is a natural product, sometimes you will find little pieces of straw or hay, it's called vegetable matter, that you might have to pick out. I think that's one of the actual draws of working with wool in a natural product, is just that it helps you become, I don't know, just more one step closer to nature, having to deal with things like straw in your materials. Okay, for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to stop here. I'm going to roll the ball between my hands, and that's going to kind of give me a feeling about whether or not it is fairly spherical or not. There's another piece of straw there. So there's my base for my monster. I'm going to turn it and turn it until I find a nice, the side that I just like the look of the most. Currently, I'll just say it's this side. Now what we're going to do, we can decide where we want the placement of the eyes and the mouth. Again, this is your monster. You can decide where you want yours, but I generally like, I'm going to move this guy aside because generally I like the look of this kind of guy the best. His mouth is pretty much right in the center and his eyes are quite low on the sides of his head. I just think it looks hilarious that way. So we're going to work on the indent for the mouth. So if you can see here, it kind of dents in. The way we do that is, like I said before, is the more you stab in one area, the more room you're going to create underneath where your needle is. So we'll just start with the top of the mouth, stabbing a straight line. And you can see already that there's a line that's actually like built right into the wool itself. So once we have that established, I'm going to just do a semicircle joining those two ends. Depending on how big you want your mouth to be, is how big of a semicircle you make. I'm just doing, it's almost, again, it's like drawing by poking holes. So you can see that in there. Once I have the basic shape, and I'm happy with the shape of the mouth, I'm going to then stab all of this inside spot. I'm going to essentially compact it and push it down. And the reason we do this and not just put the black right on the top is because it's for realism, which is ironic since we're making monsters who are not real, they're imaginary, but we want features of them that is still have realism with them. And the realism then is that a mouth recedes, a mouth is a hole, and we want to give the impression that this mouth is a hole that goes back farther. And we do that by creating the depth. So this is pretty good. You can kind of see that it's a little bit flattened now. It's not completely spherical because I've made this little semicircle in there. And I'm going to then grab some of my black. And this is going to be more than enough black for both of your monsters. And that's the nice thing about felting too, is that in general we use minuscule amounts of wool and it creates amazing effects. So we're just going to take a small amount to kind of give an idea of filling in that hole. I'm just going to lightly fold it till it's about the same size as my mouth hole. And I'm going to just place it in there, kind of find where the corner of my mouth was and the other corner of my mouth and the bottom. And right now it looks silly because it's all poofy in there, right? But if you keep stabbing evenly all through that space, it compacts it down into that hole. and flattens it out. There, I'm fairly happy with that mouth. So now I got to decide where I want my eyes. I generally make my eye recesses before I make my eyes themselves. So like I said, I prefer to have my eyes low on the heads of my monsters. So, if you want them up, or if you want them really low, if you want a single eye, like a Cyclops kind of monster, if you want two different sizes of eyes, all of these are options. So for now, I think I'm just going to kind of imagine that my eyes are going to sit here and here on my monster. And so the same sort of idea is where when we made the mouth hole, I'm going to do the same thing, except for I'm going to turn it a bit and make a circle. Stab in a circle, and wherever you've stabbed, you've left a little bit of a hole. And I'm just going to keep going in that circle until that shape is really established. And once it's established, then I can start stabbing in the middle. So that looks pretty good to me. Now, it can be slightly tricky, but again, because it's a monster, it's no big deal if it's a little bit offset, if it's a little bit different size. But I'm going to attempt to try and make my eye recess the same as the other side. So I'm going to look, I'm about a 1/4 inch away from the side of the mouth, and I'm pretty much level with the top of the eye. So I'm just going to, again, start on this side, establishing a circle. Once my circle is established, start stabbing the inside of it. I can check every once in a while to see how it looks. It's looking pretty good. Looks fairly even. Now, I'm going to just set him up and aside for just a minute, grab my white, and since this is enough, more than enough for two monsters, I'm going to separate it by sticking my fingers in the middle, making a bit of a hole, and then just pulling it apart. Now I've got two pieces of wool that are pretty much the same size. Setting one piece aside, I've got this, that again is more than enough for two eyes. I'm going to take about a 1/4 to a 1/2 inch from the edge, stick my hand in, pull it apart. Now I've got a piece that's not including the super wispy end, is about 4 inches long by about a finger width or a 1/2 inch wide. Grab another, stick my finger in to make a hole, pulling it apart, setting aside. This would even be more than enough white for another monster's eyes. So now I've got two pieces that are approximately the same size. We're going to make the eyeballs the same way as we made the base for the monster's head. It might be a little bit hard to see on the white foam, but the same way is we're just going to start rolling it up, getting as much of the air out of it as possible. Just even putting it in my hands, I guess, might even be easier than the foam because the foam is squishy and my hands are a little less squishy. Rolling, twisting, not making a cylinder because we're not just rolling it up in like a like a hay bale. We're not rolling it like this. I'm gonna turn it a little and roll, turn it and roll, and that kind of helps make it into a sphere instead. Now I'm gonna squish it down onto my felting surface. Into your sponge. I bought this one from Surplus Herbies, which is like a wholesale kind of store that near me. Anywhere that a foam shop, you can get a bigger piece of foam if you like. So I'm just, again, being very careful not to stab my hand, starting to make sure that I can let go of this without it popping up. So I'm going to just actually roll it forward after I've stabbed a few times, roll it forward, and I'm just kind of working my way around the outside of this sphere. And like I said, it doesn't take very long before it'll hold its shape. But right now, so it's holding its shape. But this is a little bit squishy and a little bit bigger than I want. I'm just going to get rid of some of this fuzz. So now I'm just going to, as I did before, work my way around the whole ball of the eyeball. Condensing it into the right shape and size that I'm looking for. So after I'm done, I'm going to roll it in my hands. Again, this kind of smooths out the edge, gets rid of some of those little needle hole pokes. And I assess it again. If it needs some more, then I will stab it some more, hold it up. This guy's going to have maybe some bigger eyeballs than the others, but that's fine. And do the same thing with the second eyeball. Roll, twist, roll, twist, roll, twist. Just trying to, even just pulling the wool out of the way. Don't let the wool kind of control what you're doing. You control the wool. Pull the wool out of the way, pull it right off. If you don't like a piece being there, you can always add more wool later if you need more wool. Trying to deal with wool that's kind of unruly is not as fun. So you be in control of the wool. You pull it and push it where you want it to. So right now, this one, it's not even looking very spherical, but if I put it down on my foam and I just start stabbing towards it, where it kind of came out on this edge here, if I start stabbing towards the center of what I want the sphere to be, all of that area of wool that kind of came out at a weird angle starts to disappear, starts to get shoved right into the middle of the ball. A little bit of purple there wants to come into that eyeball. All right, roll it in my hands again. Let's compare these two. Not bad, because we start off, whenever we're making two of something, if we start off splitting the wool into two similar amounts of wool, we will then end up automatically with the two pieces that we want to be about the same size being about the same size. Makes sense. So now let's take our eyeball, put it on our first indent, and we're just going to push down fairly firmly, not to flatten it out like a pancake, but just flatten it enough to really make sure that it's touching the base of our monster head. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the needle and we're going to work our way around the perimeter. And what that happens is part of the white from the eyeball is going to go into the body or head of the monster, and that's just the nature of the wool, is that it wants to tangle, and so then that white wool is getting shoved right into the head. So I'm going to go around the perimeter, And by going around the perimeter, it is then still securing the spherical shape. If I went just straight here, it would just start flattening out the whole ball. And again, the more you go around and around and around, the more secure this eyeball will be. But for the sake of this video, I'm going to probably stop pretty much here so that we can just get on to the next. But it already, I can pick it up. It's attached. No biggie. So let's attach the second one. Putting it into the recess, pushing down firmly, going around the perimeter, attaching, securing. All right. Now for his pupils. Grab your black, and you are going to take, depending on the size of the pupil that you want, a very, very small whiff of wool. Again, because we want two similar the size, that's what I'm working on today. I'm splitting it into two, and I'm just going to actually get it to start by rolling it between my fingers. And then I see that when I pull it apart, it's actually, this one is smaller than this one. So I'm just going to take a little bit of this one off, set it to the side, and as I'm rolling it between my fingers, I can feel that if one is way bigger than the other. If it's a little bigger, no big deal. So again, the nice thing about the wool too is you can put it on, kind of look to see if you like it. If you don't like it, you can move it. Just decide where you want those pupils to be. And when you're happy, again, instead of just going directly in the center, I'm going to tack it on just by going 1 or 2 times directly in the center. But if I just keep going directly in the center of that pupil, it's actually going to bury right into this eyeball and we're going to lose it. So instead of that, we're going to, again, go around the perimeter. It's a super tiny perimeter, but it really makes a difference in that it won't make that pupil disappear into the white of the eyeball. A little piece here that I'm just going to pull off, and same sort of idea with the other one. Find where I want it. Once I'm happy, give it 1 or 2 pokes up and down in the middle to just kind of secure where I want it to be, and then go around the perimeter of the black. Ta-da! So sometimes in the past I have left it here. I may add a slight amount of wool to the top and give him some sort of a hairdo. You can do that. You can do that even with the arms. But if you want to end here, if this is how you like him, go right ahead. That's your prerogative. But I'm going to set him aside for now, and I'm going to show you how to do the arms. So you have, again, quite a bit of purple left. If you want to make, have enough to make a tiny little monster to go with, then, maybe don't make the arms quite as big and long. So I've got this much left. I'm going to pull off this side that kind of looks a little bit like it's, out of place anyways. Set it aside. And the same as I did with the eyeballs and the pupils, I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to attempt to make it into 2 pieces about the same. So I'm going to make my hole kind of in the middle, separating gently the fibers after I've made my hole. Let's see if you can see that hole. Then I will just stick my fingers in and pull it apart. And I can kind of compare. This one might have a tiny bit more because of, let me just move everything over just a little so you can see. This one might have a tiny bit more. If that's the case, just pull it off, add it to the other pile until you think that they're about the same size. So starting with the first arm, you decide how long you want your arms to be. Like I said, this guy's arms are really quite long. I've made them with shorter arms, or I've made them with really short arms. I've made them with their arms going straight up in the air, all sorts of ways to do it. So what we're going to do is we're working on this long cylinder with a bit of a bulb on the end. And it's actually very simple to do. We just lay the wool on our surface, and we're going to, going just a little bit into the foam underneath. Not a super, we're not going to bury this whole thing in, because what that's going to do is just shove the wool into our foam, and that's not what we're looking for. We're just looking to you can hear it a little bit, go into the foam a little bit and make a line. And I'm going to fold that up to meet where I stopped that line. And I'm going to fold it across. And I'm just stabbing near the end at this point, and fold the other side across. And what that's doing is kind of making more of the wool at the bottom than there is at the top. So I'm just establishing that there's more wool at the bottom than the top. So I'm going to redraw my line, fold it over, and keep stabbing. So right now, it's very fluffy. It already has a little bit of a bulb shape, but it's way too fluffy and obviously way too big. So this is when we are going to really start utilizing the moving the wool as we're felting it. So we're going to just stab along where we want the cylinder of the arm to be, leaving the bulb for now, and then moving it a little bit, stabbing, moving it on our felting surface. You can see how that's condensing. It's starting to become that cylinder shape. If I wanted a flat arm, I wouldn't be turning it and turning it. I would just be felting it flat on one side, lifting it up and turning it actually just a 180 to the other side, and that would make a flat arm, which again, that's up to you. But since I want a cylinder arm, I'm going to just keep on turning it as I'm felting it. Okay, so I'm fairly happy with this as of now. Now we've got this big poof on the end. So we want to start condensing that, bringing it towards kind of the center and felting. If ever your project is looking flatter than you want, just make sure you lift up it from the foam and move it, move it, move it, move it, move it. So it's starting to be very much bulb shaped, but it's also a little longer than I want. Since it's longer than I want, I'm going to go from the end and just start stabbing from the end towards the center, and that's going to shorten up my bulb. Because again, whatever direction you felt in, that's the direction the wool will go, and that's the direction that will tighten. So now that I'm happier with the length of the bulb here, I'm going to now work on just tightening the whole bulb up by rolling it as I'm stabbing it. Stab, stab, roll. Stab, stab, roll. Now, until you are comfortable with the needle and needle felting and knowing where your fingers are, etc., you do not have to felt, and you're this quickly. You don't have to move your needle up and down this quickly. Do what makes you comfortable, because stabbing one of these needles into your finger is not pleasant. So if you noticed, I've kept this end fluffy for a reason. The reason is that when we attach it to our monster's head, we want something to attach so that it will blend in. Because when I grab him and I put him here, you can kind of see already, even if I just flatten this out, that it almost disappears and makes an invisible joint. Whereas if it was flat on the end, I'm just going to fold them out of the way, and I tried to attach it here, you would see that there would be a line that I'm going to be trying to deal with. So whenever you're making something that you're going to attach to something else, just going to pull off that end, make sure that you leave whatever end that you're going to attach, have a little bit of wool on the end. So now onto the number 2 arm, and doing it all again. I'm going to keep this one somewhat close so that I can kind of see the shape and size that we're going for. He's kind of like peeking. So again, I'm going to start with a line down the center, not all the way to the end, but line down the center, just a little bit into the foam, folding it up and stabbing it. Some white that wants in there. Folding it in across the middle, stabbing it, folding it to the middle again from the other side, stabbing it. Just kind of rolling it towards the middle a little bit to try and condense and start that the skinnier cylinder part of the arm. There are many felting kits out there on the market, on Amazon, on Etsy, and all of them seem, they have a wonderful selection. I've never really seen many monsters, so trying to come up with a tutorial that is somewhat unique and that you can be successful at as a beginner project. And so I really hope that you are feeling successful already and that you're enjoying this tutorial. Starting on the bulb, felting it towards itself, turning it, sometimes the vegetable matter will just kind of come to the outside as you're felting. It's fine, you can just pick it off, or you can leave it in as long as it's not too huge. It's not that big a deal. It usually will just kind of come to the surface and eventually fall off. So again, it's a little bit misshapen on the end. It's a little bit long, so let's stab from the end towards the center. Hopefully the camera hasn't shook too badly during this video, as it's kind of attached to the table I'm using. Never really thought of it till after that the stabbing that I'm doing might actually affect the camera shake, but hopefully it's still able to be utilized for you and not too much of a distraction. So this is getting to be pretty close. If you compare them, they're almost the same. If I wanted to stop here and just have like one big giant hand, that might be kind of funny too, but let's just keep going just for another few minutes just to be able to have them a bit more similar today and also to condense it a little more. So I like how the bulbs look fairly similar on these two. This cylinder is denser, skinnier than the one on this one, so I'm going to work on this one a little more. I'm just going to flip it over. Since I'm right-handed, I'm going to hold the bulb with my left hand and just really work on condensing the cylinder part of it, always turning so that I'm not flattening one side out. Same with the eyeballs and the head, just kind of rubbing it in my hands together and just seeing what it looks like. There we go. We've got two arms. This bulb maybe is a little bigger, depending on, I guess, which side you look at. But overall, pretty much the same. So now we're ready to attach the arms. Then, same as what you did with the eyes and the eyeball placement, you kind of imagine where you want it to be. Do you want them, celebrating? Woohoo! Do you, want it sticking straight out? I think, again, I just like the silliness of how long and dangly the arms are. So I'm just going to do the same as I've done with the two in the demo. And I'm just going to hold just below where the fluff ends on the arm, and I'm going to just stab the fluff of the arm right on to the head. And it takes very little time to establish that it is on, and the longer you stab those fluffy ends, the more secure these arms will be. Again, if this was a toy that you wanted somebody to play with and be able to maneuver around, you're going to need a very solid head base and a very solid arm attachment, because to be able to maneuver it around, you want to be able to be confident that it's secure. But since this is just going to be a Christmas ornament, it doesn't have to be that secure, but already, no problem, it's stuck on there. So take your second arm, kind of hold it to figure out where it looks like it's going to be about even. I think about there. Hold it just below where the fluff is and attach all the fluff. So again, please be careful with the needles as you're poking through, that if I was going to be going on this direction and my hand is here, I might poke right through and come out the other side here. So make sure that you're aware of the depth of the needle where you're poking it, and always be aware of where your fingers are. So there we go. You then can choose if you want to take a little bit of the black and go around the eyes and just add a little bit of black around the eyes to kind of create a little more depth, a little more strangeness. You can go right ahead and do that. I think I'll just leave that on this guy today for sake of time. I'm going to add his little tooth. So I'm going to take a bit of the white. Now, this is about the same amount as we had for the pupil. You just take the very smallest amount that you think you need. Start rolling it in your hands, getting rid of anything that's kind of long. Once it's a little bit condensed, you decide, am I going to have his tooth on the top? Maybe I'll have his tooth on the top this time. Which side am I going to have it? Is he going to have a mouth full of teeth? Is he going to have pointy teeth? Going right on the top edge of the black and securing his tooth on. So there's this loop of white. I don't know if you can see it. There's this loop of white. I'm going to try and hold it up and deal with it so that you can see. I'm just going to use my needle to catch that loop, bring it up to where the tooth is, and go in and out without bringing my needle completely out, and it actually gets rid of that piece. There we go. Now all that's left to do is attach the jump ring. The jump ring is a jewelry, I don't know what they're called. It's just for jewelry making, and it has an opening on it. So get a pair of needle nose pliers or 2 pairs of needle nose pliers and separate it. As soon as you've separated it, find the top of your head, and we're just going to do a U-shaped scooping motion to get one end into the wool and poking out another end side of the wool. And again, either your hands and a pair of needle nose pliers or 2 pairs, and close it up again. As soon as you've closed it up, just twist it so that that opening is hidden. Grab your hook, close it up, and there we go. Success! I hope that you've had fun today and that you will have many more projects to come in your needle felting journey. Bye!